Ciao everyone and welcome back to Green Wings Migration YouTube channel. I'm Eleonora, registered migration agent in Perth, Western Australia, and the agency I manage is Green Wings Migration. First of all, I want to thank you because we finally got to 5,000 subscribers. This is great news. I extremely appreciate your support. All the questions that you send through, all the suggestions for videos to record, this is helping us growing. So thank you very much. And for everyone who hasn't subscribed yet, please click the button. So maybe next milestone is going to be 10,000 subscribers. That would be great. All right, so for today, I want to briefly, actually not too briefly, touch on to the possibilities that you could have to migrate to Australia if you are a nurse. So I'm pretty sure if you're following the migration development, migration legislation, news that are shared by the Department of Home Affairs, and also if you are on the different blogs about migration systems and pathways, you have surely been reading about options for nurses and how much nurses are wanted in Australia. You clearly saw, I'm sure, the recent invitation round through Visa 189 that had many nurses expression of interest being accepted and invited. You have potentially be reading about big hospitals group hiring nurses directly from overseas in order to support the health system in Australia. It goes without saying, it's a logical conclusion. When the population is growing, the population needs are growing as well. And health is certainly one of the most important needs that we have. Therefore, the medical personnel, nurses, and all the stuff is highly sought after. Now, despite being so much needed, it doesn't necessarily mean that to come to Australia and work as a nurse is the easiest thing on the face of earth. And if you are a nurse, there are 3 steps actually that you have to face, 2 of which have nothing to do with an actual visa application, but are both applications that you have to go through in order to eventually apply for a visa. And these are your skills assessment and the registration. So skills assessment happens through Anmac and the registration happens through Ahpra. What does it mean to be registered? What does it mean to get a positive skills assessment? A registration is essentially a confirmation by the specific medical board that your qualifications, your work experience, your knowledge, your level of English, your person in terms of character, your continuous development, like your CPDs, are actually in line with what the Australian system expects from their nurses. And for everyone working as a nurse, whether you're a citizen, migrant, temporary migrant, permanent resident migrant, anyone, a registration is compulsory if you want to operate as a nurse in Australia. The skills assessment, it goes without saying, it's only required by those people who want to migrate. So just to make it as simple as possible, if you are in Australia and you are, let's say, partner of a 482 visa holder, so your partner has been sponsored under an unrelated occupation, let's say welder, for example, and you are the partner on a 482 visa, you have full-time working rights, you don't need to be sponsored by the hospital, and you want to work as a nurse, you need to get your registration in place. But if you want to get your own visa to work as a nurse, you also need not only the registration, but you also need the skills assessment. So what you need to do before, whether it's your skills assessment or your Ahpra registration, will depend essentially on the country where you studied. So I'm going to explain how the registration works and how the skills assessment works. So then once you have information about these 2 things, you will be able to understand why for some people registration needs to happen first and for other people the skills assessment can happen first. And I'm going to read it because the qualification assessment that Ahpra makes is dependent on the country where you come from. So I really want to make sure that I give you the specific information. When you want to register as a nurse, as I said, the association that you need to refer to is Ahpra. Ahpra is the medical board in Australia, and underneath Ahpra we have all the different individual boards depending on the profession. So the one that is the most relevant for you is the Nurses and Midwives Medical Board. Ahpra will want to evaluate 6 main criteria before granting or denying your registration. The most important one is your qualification level. So they need to assess whether it is comparable to the Australian system, and if comparable, how comparable it is. The second thing they want to check is that you are proficient in English. They also want to make sure that you are a person of good character, that you have recency of practice. So it's not like you stopped working as a nurse 20 years ago and out of the blue you want to do it again because you want to migrate to Australia. They want to make sure that you keep informed through your CPDs, and you also want to make sure that you have proper insurance. So if anything happens, your liability is covered by the insurance itself. So I'm going to read through the qualification assessment criteria because the qualification comparability depends on the country where you studied. So I want to make sure to give you the specific information. Obviously, you need to have a qualification that is at least equivalent to a bachelor degree if you want to work as a registered nurse. Bachelor degree in Australia is at least 3 years long and is considered an EQF level 7. If you studied in Canada, Hong Kong, Republic of Ireland, UK and USA, the comparability is granted. So these countries have a system in place, an education system in place that really translates directly into Australian standards. So your qualification will surely be accepted. If you studied in Belgium, Denmark, Finland, Germany, Hong Kong as a midwife, Israel, Malaysia, Netherlands, Norway, Pakistan, Portugal, Singapore, South Africa, Republic of Korea, South Korea, Spain and Sweden, your degree may be considered comparable. Any other country will need to go through a proper assessment. So you are not excluded from registration, but you need to take additional steps to make sure that you show Australia you can do this. So if you are an international qualified nurse that has studied in one of these countries where you don't receive direct recognition, you will need to go through a self-assessment first, an online course second, and potentially 2 additional exams. So the first step before lodging your registration is to complete a self-check assessment. Based on the outcome of your self-check assessment, you might belong to 3 different streams. Stream 1 is for people whose qualification is relevant to the profession and substantially equivalent to the Australian standard. Stream 2 is for people who have qualification relevant to the profession and not substantially equivalent to the Australian standard. And then the Stream 3 is for people whose qualification are not relevant to the industry of nursing and not substantially equivalent. So for these last people, the one in Stream 3 or Stream C, it's going to be a suggestion to take additional courses, either in Australia or overseas, in a country where obviously you could actually achieve substantial comparability. People who come out in Stream A or Stream 1 would be suggested to proceed and do the Orientation P1, which is an online course where you will be taught more about the Australian standards. People in Stream 2 are the ones, in my opinion, that will go through the most steps. These are people that have to first present or attend the course in Orientation P1. Once they have completed the Orientation P1, they have to submit their portfolio, in which they submit again copies of their qualifications, copy of their ID documents, and they get assessed. And once this assessment is complete, then they can proceed to the outcome-based assessment. The outcome-based assessment is a final stage where they have to go through 2 different exams. The first exam is a multiple choice sort of test, and the second one, OSCE. I have many clients who tried the OSCE in multiple occasions. and they describe it as a very painful experience. Very costly, first of all, and very painful, because the way it's run and also the way they assess you may not necessarily be how things work in the real world. So a word of advice: if you have to go through the OSCE examination, make sure that you prepare yourself. So try to connect with someone who did it before, although I know that theoretically you are not allowed to share information about it, but I'm sure that there will be providers that train people up for the purpose of passing the exam, or at least try to do their best. At the end of everything, you've passed your test, you've passed your skills check assessment and everything, you can finally apply for your registration. When the registration is granted, it can be granted for in full. It can be granted with limitations, which normally suggests you have to work under supervision for a certain amount of time, or it can be denied if you pass the qualification assessment, which I remind you was the criterion number 1, but maybe then you fail your English, for example, or your character, or your CPD, or your recency of practice, okay? So once you have gone through OSCE and everything else, you still have the other 5 criteria to meet in order to get your registration approved. So now that you've done everything and you have hopefully gotten your registration, if you also need a visa to migrate, you will need to go through the skills assessment. So do you remember at the beginning I told you that some people might need to go through the skills assessment first and then the registration, some others may need to do the opposite? Well, this is it. So if you studied in Canada, Hong Kong, Republic of Ireland, USA, and UK, you have to do your skills assessment first and then apply for your registration. But if you studied in any of the other countries, you need to go through your registration first and then apply for your skills assessment. What is Anmac going to assess about your profile in the skills assessment application? You can guess it's pretty much the same that Ahpra did in your registration. So they're going to assess the equivalency of your qualifications, your English competency, your recency of practice, your continuous development and update. So after quite a while, because obviously you can imagine this takes a few months to put together, you might eventually have a registration and a skills assessment as well. How do you use that? Well, nurses, as I said, they are featured on the long-term skill occupation list and also the core list, which basically makes you eligible for any kind of work visa that currently exists in Australia. These include skill visas, 491, 190, 189, as well as sponsor visas, 482, 494, 186. Which one is better? There is potentially no better visa, like any visa that brings you here would be a good visa, but possibly if you are overseas, you will be looking at a skilled visa option, not as much as to a sponsorship visa option. Why? Because sponsorship requires an Australian business is willing to hire you. So if you're not even here, unless you are part of a big recruitment campaign that some clinics, hospital, or even the Department of Health is doing, you are unlikely to already have the support from an Australian business. And that's why many nurses and medical professionals in general try to look at the skill visa options. I said at the beginning, the nurses generally are invited with lower points on the skills points test, because there is a big need of these people, of these professionals. At the moment, the skill visa program is a little bit up in the air. The states have only received temporary allocation of 250 places each. Most states are using those places to get rid of the backlog from last year that they couldn't finish when the program closed. So let's say that we're still waiting for the federal government to actually allocate places to the single states so that they could resume skill migration programs. In saying so, I prepare an analysis that is based on the most recent invitation round that occurred for visa 189. All nurses, all registered nurses, were invited at 80 points. And I try to create a little list of suggestions and hints for you to evaluate how you could achieve these 80 points. Obviously, this is just general advice. Everyone's situation is different, but the points are the points. So how can you get these 80 points? If your age is between 25 and 33, so not turned 33 yet, then you're going to get 30 points, which is the maximum points you can get for age. Because you are working in this industry, you are likely going to have at least a bachelor degree. So that's going to give you 15 points for sure. Maybe you studied a PhD as well. That's going to give you 20 points. Your English has to be very good because you need IELTS academic level of 7 in order to get your registration and to work as a nurse in Australia. If you achieve that level, maybe you can push it a little bit further and get your superior level of English. In order to do that, remember that IELTS General, for the point system purposes, is accepted. You don't have to do academic IELTS and achieve 8. You can do the general one, which is theoretically a little bit easier. So that's another 20 points that you can score. Obviously, you are from overseas, so you are likely to be able to speak a second language. And if you have good competency, like the one that you showed with the IELTS test, you could consider taking the NATI CCL test, which will give you additional 5 points. This is essentially a course that you do and a test that you take that will provide you with the possibility to be a community translator. So you don't get the NATI registration officially, but you could help your community thanks to this little accreditation that you receive. And because you could be useful for the community, Australia rewards you with 5 additional points. If you are single, you have 10 points. If you are with someone, and this someone is also a skilled migrant, meaning they have competent English and they can pass a skills assessment in an occupation that's on the long-term skill list as well, then they can contribute with 10 points. So these are little tricks that you can consider. If you're far away from these 80 points, then you may consider coming to Australia on a student visa, maybe obtain a qualification that will surely grant you registration without going through the old shenanigans that we discussed before. And if you study for at least 2 years in a regional area, you will also get 10 points on the points test. In saying so, this is valid in October 2025, which is when this video is being recorded. The department has been discussing about modifying the system, the point system. We'll see what happens, if it happens, when it happens, and rest assured we will record a new video about it. I also would like to tell you that we are considering doing a series of videos about the health professions. Today we discussed primarily about nurses. I want to do one that is specific for midwives, although it's going to be very similar to the one for the nurses, but slightly different. I want to do one for enrolled nurses. I want to do one for other health professionals like physiotherapists, for example, or other professionals like radiotherapists. I want to do one for doctors, although the one for doctors, whether they are GPs or specialists, is going to be a little bit more complex. So we want to create a series that is specific for the health personnel, hoping that many more people will become aware of what's required, and based on that, they will make better choices when they try to migrate to Australia. For today, this is all. As always, if you have questions, doubts, anything, please feel free to put your questions in the comment section below. Send an email to info@greenwingsmigration.com.au. And if you are a nurse and you're interested in knowing more about your specific possibilities, feel free to book a consultation with the dedicated link below, so that we will collect information about your profile and one of our agents will be able to give you your prospects of migrating to Australia. Thank you. Ciao, ciao.